Welcome to the Revolution of Purpose podcast.
Or video, however you're choosing to watch it.
My name is Tracy Caldwell, and this is Kova Orent, and we are your hosts today in a dialogue between the two of us.
Yeah, I wanted to make the time to be able to record this today because we sat down and we did our purpose statement yesterday. We got you on board with our purpose statement and really hashed out our premise statements, our vision, and our strategy for really solving our world problems through a revolution of purpose and doing this at a structural level. I think it's important to just share with people us and our creative process with launching this business together and the experience and whatever it is that we're wanting to share in regards to starting from the ground floor and building it.
Beautiful. So here we are sharing our messy, imperfect process with you as we learn how to create and share. So may this serve you deeply.
Yeah, we had some really big breakthroughs yesterday. It was funny. Last week when we started with the why, I was really going deep with Tracy and asking her why lots of times on her business, which is centered around Eros Gamos, which stands for sacred marriage. And after some tapping and some crying and some letting go, I was able to pull forth the name Revolution of Purpose. And when I got it, I was like, that makes so much sense. That's what I think is the solution to all of our world problems. It's like really the combination of the two of us. And I later found out that Tracy was actually not on board with that specific purpose statement. So we recorded last week's podcast and then we went to the drawing board yesterday and I asked you that question a whole bunch more times. And I'd like to hear from you what really shifted in regards to getting on board with Revolution on Purpose.
My biggest resistance around purpose was that for me, in my mind, purpose was associated with a doingness, with a career, with a vocation. And even though I actually clarified it in our last recording that it's not that, there was a part of me that does associate that. So for me, it's just a really unsexy, unfun, dry, not exciting term. And so I was wanting something a little sexier, a little more light, a little more fun. And what we came to is that revolution does feel true. It has this weight to it. It's a whole movement in itself. And purpose is actually the way of being. So it's essentially the higher calling, the higher purpose to existence. So it's the life force energy within all of us, which brings us back to love. And it's actually on a cellular level, on a DNA level, that we actually get to embody our purpose. So essentially, it's just another way of saying, what is your big why for being here, for existing, for loving, for doing something bigger than just going to work and doing the things that you have to do?
So I want to ask you a couple questions on that to get some clarity for the viewers. Number one, why does revolution move you?
I see revolution really as a collective movement that as an individual, we can move mountains. And at the same time, if we have a whole team behind us, a whole movement, people who are in alignment with our values, with our dreams, with our ideals, and are moving with us and co-creating on this path, then that actually creates a movement or a revolution rather than maybe one rebel. So it basically takes the rebel and makes it a cultural movement. So that's really why revolution is important to me, that it actually transforms it from just a squeaky wheel to, wow, here we are making massive change.
Okay. So I'd like to go one step deeper on that. And why is that important to you?
We're still doing 7 levels deep.
I just want the people who are listening to us to really understand you and why we are creating from our revolution of purpose.
So when it comes to creating a movement of love on this planet and actually changing our fundamental ways of existing on a cellular level, on an individual level, but also a cultural level, structural, and how everything is operating together. I just lost my train of thought. Wow, that's good.
So I'm going to take a step back right there, and I'm going to ask you, why is revolution and creating a movement of individuals who aren't being rebels themselves, but rebels as a group, why is that important to you right now?
I see that as a necessity in order to really create a culture that we want to live in, to share love, to share joy, to share life expansion, and to allow us to actually move as a collaborative, harmonious species on this earth. That if it's just a couple of us who are like, I'm rooting for love, it just doesn't really do, it does something, and it doesn't do quite as much as if it's a collective movement.
Why is it important for you to do it as a collective?
You can make a bigger impact quicker. It's faster and more momentous. If you think of an ant carrying a leaf that's like 10 times its size, maybe 3 times its size.
An unknown amount, size larger than the ant.
Yes. Then if you have a couple ants together, then they can carry something way heavier than just 3 times each of the ant size. So basically, we can move more and make a bigger impact, a bigger ripple with more of us.
And why is it important for you to make a bigger impact as a team?
There are a couple of reasons. We can go either the positive or the negative route. The positive route is that it's way more fun to do it as a team. Way more fun to actually do it in a collaborative effort and to get to use everyone's gifts, and it's a whole strategy, and you get to figure out what the best way to work together is and how each of your gifts and your strengths can play together. The more shadowy aspect is that there's so much pain and suffering in this world that let's actually make change to that sooner rather than later. And we can do it faster, all working together.
So I'm hearing you that it's more fun to do it together, and you're also recognizing that in the state of the world that we're in right now, we need to make change, we need to make it quickly.
Yeah.
Why is that important to you?
Why is it important to do it as a collective?
And there's 2 prongs, because, we don't want to look at just the light, or we don't want to just look at the dark. Like, we need to look at the reality of humanity right now and recognizing that we need to change, and it'd be more fun to do it as a team, to do it as a community, to do it as a group.
And far more effective.
Yeah. So why is that important to you?
It's important to me because I want to live in a love-based world where everyone's working together in harmony and sharing love. Even having the most subtle interactions of having a great conversation with a grocery store clerk, like that can elevate your day in a really positive way. Or if they're in a grumpy mood, it can be neutral or negative. So just on that very micro level, if we can actually expand that to a macro level, then it can have huge effects on everyone's well-being and thriving. Why is it important to you?
I want to ask it one more time, just because I think we're almost at 7 levels, and we're really getting down into the reason why you're doing what you're doing. It's improving the quality of your life. It's improving...
in everyone's lives.
Yeah. And why is that so important to you?
From an internal perspective, it's my ideal to wake up feeling joyous and loving and happy and excited and motivated and purposeful every morning. And on a collective level, I'd love for everyone around me to feel that too. That's what creates a thriving culture and civilization. I don't know if I went any deeper on that one.
I'll just ask one more time, and then I think we're good to move on. Why is it important for you to wake up feeling that way and to create a thriving culture of people who wake up that way?
It's creating the highest expression of humanity as a species. Like, if you look at other animals, it's not like animals wake up in the morning and they're like, oh, I'm so upset about living today. That's just not a thing. Like an animal wakes up and is like, I'm here and I'm alive and I have energy coursing through me and I do my place in this world. I am in my place in this world. And it's only humans where we get to make a choice if we want to live our correct place or not.
How's it feel to say that?
Well, I've been listening to Bill Plotkin recently, and that is something that he talks about a lot, the essential place, and that essentially the way the soul works is it's actually finding your place in your role, essentially, in society, in your culture, in nature, and that place is your thriving. That place is home.
So I asked you how you felt, and you responded with your mind.
I did.
Would you like to tell me how you feel about communicating this?
It feels a little bit vulnerable. I feel a little frustrated that I asked you asked me the question 5 times, 7 times, however many times it was. I felt spotlighted, even though I'm on a podcast being recorded. So of course I'm in the spotlight with the sun illuminating me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely a little vulnerable. Why is revolution of purpose important to you?
I think revolution of purpose is basically the integration of us. You viscerally understand revolution in your body.
That is true.
And I viscerally understand purpose in mine. And so when it comes together to creating this, when we're merging, to me, I think it encapsulates the both of us.
So when you say merging, what does that mean?
Bringing you and me together to create.
Why is it important to bring us together to create and our felt understandings in our bodies?
Which question is it?
Whichever was your why.
So why is it important for us to come together and create right now?
Sure. Let's do that one.
Number 1, I think we're being asked to. Number 2 is we're stronger together. And 3 is that we are so different from each other, whether it be from the way we talk, to the way we move, to the way that we think. We're literally wired differently. But I think that you and I and us have a calling to share getting into alignment with our purpose and our unique place in the grid.
Why is that important?
Why is it important to be in our unique place in the grid?
Why is it important for us to share our journey of finding purpose?
And embodying purpose. Why is it important for us to share our journey of embodying purpose? Mm-hmm. I think to provide a roadmap to be role models and to call forth people on their journey to becoming what it is that is trying to be expressed through them, regardless of what level you are.
What does level mean?
For me, it means impact. Impact of varying degree, depending on your achieved success. However, I don't want to label success as just blanket success. I want to describe success as purposeful, aligned, integrous, fulfilling, and satisfying and life-giving success that takes your greatest challenges, your greatest triumphs, and gives them to others to call them forth into greatness.
So what is your definition of success? You touched on it there, but how do you define it?
I think that's still a work in progress for me.
In general.
Success in general? I think success in general is dependent on the person who is creating success for themselves. I think that everyone's needs to figure out what success means for them. I don't think that there's a blanket version of success. One thing I know for certain is it's not what society tells us it is. And for me, that's meant going inwards and really finding out what is it that I'm really wanting to create? How is it that I'm really wanting to live my life? What am I wanting to do with my life? How am I wanting to spend my time? How do I make an impact? How can I support myself in thriving and help other people in thriving? For me, it's being healthy, it's being abundant, both financially and in opportunities and experiences and things, if I so desire them to be things.
So why is success important to you?
It's not so much success that's important to me.
What is important to you?
Contribution.
Why is contribution important to you?
Contribution is important to me is because that's what gives me fulfillment and it fills up my cup every day. It's transcending the need to make it all about me and feeding and nourishing humanity with my gifts.
What is your intention for this podcast?
The intention for this podcast was to really just share our journey of building this movement called Revolution of Purpose. We have identified why we are naming it that way.
Why is Revolution of Purpose important to you?
Revolution of Purpose is important to me because I think a revolution of purpose is the solution to solving our world problems.
Why is solving our world problems important to you?
Well, I think it's important to find meaning and purpose in our experience of being human. For however long we're here, I ask myself the question, it's like, what is the greatest service I can provide to humanity during this short period of time that I'm alive? And that is the Holy Grail question. And that is why we have this podcast and why we have this stream.
Why is that important to you?
It's how we transcend suffering. Like I know in my own experience with transcending my own suffering and my own struggle and my own dissatisfaction and, you know, all of the hardships of being human has been through finding a higher purpose, something outside of myself that I can devote myself to that can help give me the oomph, the energy, the commitment to transcend those challenges and to overcome and to become something greater.
Why is it important for you to become something greater?
I think that's the whole point. I think humans inherently have this need and this desire to grow. And that's actually what makes life fulfilling. And Tony Robbins even says that, like, if you're not growing, you're dying. And being on the pathway of service, being on the pathway of purpose is about growth. But it's not just about you, because at some point that growth actually needs to be shared. It's a moral obligation to share the growth that you've experienced to actually help and to contribute to others. And both those needs fulfill the spiritual side of our nature, which is the part that really hungers for meaning and satisfaction in our experience of life.
Speak to my heart. Why is that important to you?
Makes the whole thing worth it.
Why is that important to you?
It makes it fulfilling.
What makes it fulfilling?
Life.
Purpose?
Yeah.
Purpose makes life fulfilling?
Mm-hmm. Living purposefully is one of the tenets of self-esteem. And our relationship to ourself is based off how purposeful we are living. And if we're not living purposefully, like I have in the past, or go through phases of feeling that way, there's no point. There's no point to living. And for me, even in the depths of the despair of not having a point to all of this, or the depths of the despair of wanting to die, or the depths of the despair that are scared of not fully living my potential, I honor myself by living purposely.
Why is that important?
Because my relationship with me dictates my relationship with everybody else. And if I'm not living purposely, it affects my relationship with myself negatively, which means I wouldn't be able to have the amazing relationship I have with you and my family and my friends. And I think that our relationship with ourselves is the bedrock for a healthy, thriving culture. And if we don't feel purposeful, if we aren't purposeful, it's very possible that we've lost track of what's important.
Why is it important to have a healthy, thriving culture?
I think there is a potential that is only beginning to be unlocked in terms of what's possible for humanity. And I think humans have an inherent desire to reach self-realization and the honor of realizing one's true potential. So I think it's inherent. It may have been forgotten. And I think that's one of the things that we're here to show and to be. Which is why I think revolution of purpose is the key for a thriving, healthy, prosperous culture that really honors the full potential of human potential.
Why is it important for humans to live their potential?
I think it's an inner drive. I think it's a seed of potential that lies within and often goes dormant. But it can also be sparked. And I'm wanting to spark that within people right now. I'm wanting to spark that seed of potential that lies within everyone.
When was the first time you thought about purpose?
It was unconscious. The first time I thought about purpose, I was having health challenges. This was almost a decade ago. And what I was doing wasn't working. Like I was doing all like the traditional methods to be able to drop weight specifically. And nothing that I was doing was working. And I was only 25, 24 at the time. And usually in the past that had been no problem. And it was really frustrating to me to not get the results that these usual actions would take to be able to get the things that I was wanting. And I ended up seeking out professional help to help with what I perceived to be a hormonal imbalance. And I stumbled across a teacher by the name of Dr. Rita Marie Loscalzo. And at the time I was based in Austin. And what was really interesting about Rita Marie is that she has an Institute for Nutritional Endocrinology, which was exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for more of a natural food-based way to be able to balance my hormones, which I could instinctively knew existed, but you know, traditional medicine doesn't necessarily point to diet yet. And
endocrinology.
Endocrinology is the endocrine system, so the hormonal part of the body. I'm not an expert in that specific thing. But long story short, I ended up seeking help out for it. And I had the blessing of being able to study under her, and she's a master level and wizard at her craft, to say the least. And she teaches doctors and nurses and health coaches how to use functional medicine to really heal the root of people's health issues. And that's what she did with me. So I healed something that traditional medicine couldn't help me with. And in doing so, I was called to water fast. And it was something that was introduced to me, and it wasn't forced on me by any means, but I was intrigued by the idea of it. And I was called to do it. And I remember when I was beginning the fast or even during the fast, and the funny thing is it wasn't conscious at the time that I had a purpose behind what I was doing, but I had the thought that if I could heal myself, then I could heal the world. And that specific purpose statement is what ended up getting me to fast on water for 36 days and to not feed myself when my body was hungry, but to let my body detox itself out and ultimately experience peak states of consciousness that really changed who I was and am and really changed the trajectory of my life.
So a 36-day water fast.
Yep.
That is pretty unheard of in our society, to the point where most people have never fasted before, or if they have, it's been maybe a 5-day fast max.
The most normal I've heard for most people is around 7 days.
Yeah.
I know someone else who did it for 2 weeks, but that is the exception and not the norm.
Yeah. So Jesus fasted for 30 days, right?
40
days. Jesus fasted for 40 days. And so the significance and the parallels between that occurrence and your experience, what did you actually come out of that experience with?
Got it. I just want to touch on the Jesus part there because I have read that part of the New Testament. And he basically, from my understanding, which could be wrong, but it's my perception, is that he had to deal with his ego to be able to transcend human desires, basically, to be able to access higher states of consciousness. There's not a huge section about it in the Bible, which is really interesting. Then again, the New Testament isn't very long either. But like, from my perspective of it, he was purposefully using fasting as an ascension technique to transcend the human part of him and have access to his God self, is what I view. And that's coming from me, who I've fasted 3 days longer than my body should have fasted. Like, my body was legitimately hit the point of like what all the fasting literature calls as like the gnawing in the throat, which is like technically when your body doesn't have any more fat to consume. And I kept fasting 3 days after that, which was a mistake. So I don't recommend doing this without clinical supervision. And
as a caveat, Kova had supervision.
I did have supervision. Yeah. I still had 2 different doctors. One was a nutritionist and one was a doctor that was overlooking me during that process. And people actually go to like actual centers to do this. And that's the thing. It's like, this is not something to do it alone. And at the same time, like, I just got obsessed with it at the time. Like, I remember finding out about it. And the reason I even did water fasting in the first place was because I got to witness how bad my food addiction was when I was just even on a juice cleanse. And as someone who was needing to do all these healing protocols to heal the root of the hormonal balances that I was having, I realized that I couldn't heal my body with food in the picture. And so I fasted for a little bit on juice. And then I found about water fasting. And it turns out water fasting is like the oldest healing modality in the world. Like, our body has an inherent ability to heal itself. And there's a whole process to it. There's lots of literature on it. The pharmaceutical companies are not going to want you to know that because you don't need to buy anything for it. You do need a specific type of water, which I didn't even do. I did that part specifically wrong. But I didn't know that was within me. And I think that was the most startling part, was like, when I got asked about it later, it was like, what did you learn about yourself from that? I was like, oh, like, when I set my mind on a goal or I make a decision from a place of resolve, like, I can absolutely overcome anything. And so when it comes to your question about like comparing that similarity to Jesus per se, first of all, Jesus was older when he did it. I was a lot younger. I'm 32, almost 33. And I did that when I was 24 and 25. And it's taken me nearly a decade and a substantial amount of money to be able to get myself to a place where I'm in this reality and making things occur effectively and actually using that experience as something that I help people with in regards to the frequencies that they embody and the way that they work and what they create. So it was an absolutely life-changing and transformative experience for myself. And I'm not Jesus.
What were those peak states of consciousness like? How would you describe it?
Well, right when you asked that question, I remember a leaf falling, like on the last days of the fast. So like day 33, like day 30 to day 33 approximately. And I was out like in the rolling hills of Texas. I was based in Austin at the time. And I remember having to move really slowly. And I did it for a lot of the fast actually, because my body didn't have a lot of energy. Like most of its energy was being used to like detox itself. And the latter days of the fast, I actually posted this on my previous Facebook. It was like a poem that was describing like what it was like to be present with the leaves while they were falling. And it was absolutely picturesque, like the beauty and like the most minute details and the vibrancy and the vitality of even just a leaf falling. That's not even on a tree anymore. Like there was nothing else that was happening but besides that leaf specifically falling, and just like the absolute inherent beauty of that leaf is just one thing that comes to mind.
How has that experience transformed your perception of reality?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I want to acknowledge about perception is like, it changed what was important to me. Beforehand, I was very money oriented. I was very like success in the traditional sense oriented. I was very focused on the material and gaining the material. And after that experience, like I learned to love myself for the first time in my entire life. Like I was full of love, and not from the like, I love and accept myself and just saying it like an incantation, but like I was actually embodying a place of love within myself that I had never experienced in my entire life, and no one around me had never experienced in my entire life. And I actually developed the ability to fall in love with another person for the first time during the fast. And that was because I had an overflowing well of love within me that was actually able to overflow into other people. That was the first time I really experienced true love. And I didn't even know what it was at the time. Like even in retrospect, like when I look at that experience and I look at what I was experiencing in that experience, like I didn't know how to label it. And only now, like as I like study consciousness and read Dr. David Hawkins' like explanations of these different states of like love and unconditional love, like that was unconditional love. And like unconditional love is like completely impersonal. It's something that flows through you, as is love itself, and humans get attached to it being within certain people or through certain things or through certain activities or experiences or whatever it is, right? Love is actually within all of us. We have unlimited access to it. And that's from the place that we actually love another. It's not trying to get love from another. It's not trying to manipulate love from another. It's not trying to fill a void within ourselves to feel more love. It's like, it's actually there. And I had no idea.
So how has that affected your purpose?
Well, as I said, I didn't know that what I was doing in that experience was purpose. But after the experience, and I was like on the call with part of the community that I was in who was doing functional medicine, whom of which no one else was fasting like this. Like this was a personal calling and a personal choice. And again, proceed with caution and do your research and make sure that you're in an environment to be able to fast. And also just the after fast is just as important. The fast, I didn't know that. What did I learn about myself, or what did I learn?
Purpose.
What did I learn about purpose? So one, I had a purpose that was like, it got me through hell and high water. It got me to be able to like transcend the desires of the ego, which is to want food and that's not necessarily true. There's also the desire for the body to want food itself, right? So like to be able to transcend like the bodily desires itself, like, and then the determination that was required to be able to go to the point of like legitimate starvation. Like I didn't know that I had a purpose until it was pointed out to me that I had a purpose. And I had never done anything like that in my entire life. I didn't even know I was capable of that until someone reflected that back to me. And I was like, oh shit, like I am a determined person. Oh my God, I had no idea that I had access to that specific thing. And then I think the biggest thing for when I started to consciously connect to purpose, although it took some time to really understand what purpose was, because, you know, after the fast, I asked for help actually, which, you know, and the people on this podcast will get to know that, like, I asked my family for help because the states I was experiencing after fast were just like highly volatile and highly honestly destructive to myself. And I didn't know how to manage the integration of what I had experienced in that experience. And so I ended up asking for help. And that was like a huge turning point in my specific journey, because when I asked for help and, you know, being in a recovery type setting, like one of the things in 12 steps is like, you have to surrender your will over to God. It's like step 4, step 3. I don't remember what it was. And, you know, I wasn't in AA or NA because of narcotics. I was in it because it was just part of the program. And like, I eventually got out of that portion of it. But that was the first time acknowledging that, like, to be able to transcend like our suffering, where there needs to be a purpose that's outside of ourselves, and surrendering our will over to God. Right. And I didn't get what that meant at the time whatsoever. And it wasn't until years later that, you know, I was going through like one of the biggest trials of my life and needing to find a way through it. Like when there was absolute darkness, and I had a friend actually reflect this to me at the time when he was going through a period of darkness. He's like, it's completely dark and all there is an ember of light. Like, you know how small an ember is? Like an ember is like that tiny little, like, it's smaller than a piece of fire that eventually turns into fire. But he's like, all I have is that little piece. And so I learned to basically continue to blow on that tiny little ember within me, within this essence, within this consciousness. And that's where I found purpose, was like in the deepest, darkest parts of my soul and experience, like the absolute pointlessness of being alive, and the destructive and the terrible suffering that was within me. And the only way I found out was through purpose. Like there always had to be something outside of me, which has changed many times. That's the thing, is like sometimes our purpose doesn't necessarily stay the same. But one of the things I've learned is like purpose will change. And I always had something outside of myself driving myself forward. So no matter how bad it got, no matter how hard it was or how much it sucked or how much I wanted to kill myself, I still went forward and got myself to where I am now, which is like extraordinarily mentally healthy, and like actually have integrated the frequencies and the consciousness that I experienced on the fast. I am full of love for myself, like complete, absolute, unconditional love for myself, to the point where I can actually unconditionally love you. And not from a place of attachment, like from a place of true love. And I would never have been able to do that from not experiencing that experience. So for me, it's like when we get to share this with other people, it's like I am bringing people into like a deep integration of unconditional love from like the most extreme circumstances you can possibly exist, and showing people and having them feel what it is that we feel like together, and being like, hey, this is possible. Hey, just so you know, this is possible. And it's within you too, if you're so willing to take the risk, if you're so willing to take the call. And I don't wish that upon absolutely anyone. I do not suggest fasting at that length by yourself. I do not suggest fasting without supervision in a technical setting, like I'd mentioned. Like, I don't recommend that specific path for it, but I'm extremely grateful for it happening, because the love that I've learned to cultivate in myself and stabilize within myself, not as some fleeting state that some substance brings me or lack thereof of food. It's like I get to bring that love into absolutely everything I do, whether that be the leaders that I develop, the visionaries who I help expand and anchor and ground their visions into reality. Like, I am building the systems and structures of love through the people that I'm developing, and it's passed on to my family too. Like, I've gotten to bring this like true, genuine love into my family and heal my family and bring us together and break generational traumas and patterns that weren't serving us and bring us back together. And I'm so grateful for the immense amount of struggle and sacrifice that was being asked of me, because now I can bring that back to those I love and get to share that with the world.
Let's all digest that for a moment.
You know, recently we were talking about this and how most people don't ask me about the fast. So I'll like tell them about the fast, and then they just kind of go into this phase of like, what the fuck? Like, what? And like, that doesn't even go into their brain. Like, their whole body goes into shock when they hear it. And Tracy made a really good point recently. It's like, Kova, most people don't have the humility to ask you how it was. And that's fair, because it's like so much more that the mind can perceive. And at the same time, I'm so grateful to be able to get to share about it, because like it is, and there is more to it that just completely changed my perception of reality. Completely changed my perception of reality. And that is what drew me to purpose. That's how you heal. That's how you transcend suffering, is through purpose.
So when did you realize that purpose was what was actually bringing you through that darkness and the struggle?
I want to say it was summer of 2020, actually. You know, when the whole world was falling apart, I was dying and died. And what I mean is a specific part of my ego died. And, you know, when I went through treatment, I developed a relationship in treatment that she and I got through things with each other. And we were able to lean on each other and help each other in recovering. And when I lost that relationship, that crutch, that codependency made it really obvious to me that I needed to find that within myself. And I remember being in a loft condo on the outskirts of Bend, Oregon, which was like this tiny, it's not tiny, but it's like a decent sized mountain town in Oregon that was like right on the forest and like all these different mountain biking tracks and right on the river. And it was so amazing for walking and just being outside. And I just remember going into my internal world and there being such a deep despair and knowing that no one else could get me out of this. Like there was a part of me that was just like it's just despair. Like despair is like the best word to describe what it's like to be in that area of hopelessness. And yet I was driven outside of it because of something greater.
Can you put words to that something greater?
I have hesitancy too because I don't want this person to hear this and be like it's about them, because at the end of the day it's not about them, although that person did serve as a shining light. That's what I mean by higher purpose. Like, so whatever it is that you choose, like that person served as a, hey, like you're going to get through this because that is what's on the other side of this. And that is not what was on the other side of it at all. That's the funny thing. It was not on the other side of it. However, just having that shining light is what made me to be able to get through the hardest, most difficult places of, I think, the psyche that I know I've at least ever experienced. And I know that I help other people with this too. It's like going into those deep, dark parks where they're like, there's no point. Like they're scared of dying. They're scared of living. They're scared of living their life fully. Like that's what's associated with purposelessness. Like I have the ability to do that with people. And, you know, my design is to do it myself. And so to break my codependencies, I had to do it myself. And it sucked. It completely sucked. And I completely honor that part of me, but there's no way that I could ever convey any more than it sucked then, and you'll never understand how much it sucked. But at the same time, it's like that part of me got stronger because of it.
So what I'm hearing is that having a higher purpose could be as simple as being motivated by another person. Mm-hmm. So that could be a son or a daughter. Yep. If you literally are responsible for another human, or it could be a partner or a perceived partner.
Exactly.
Right. Or it could be a higher cause, like healing your body for the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's true. It could be a purpose. It could be a cause. It could be, you know, a person. It could be a relationship. It could be a calling. Like there's so many things that could be a purpose. And, you know, the farther along my path I've gone, I've eventually gotten to like surrender, right? People kept telling me to let go, and like I had no idea how to let go. And now that I know how to let go, which that's a whole episode in itself. So like, learning how to surrender my will over to God. Like I've learned how to do that specifically. So it's actually not so much attached to other people or even missions anymore. It's about surrendering control to God and having faith.
So if you were to encapsulate your purpose in a statement or a paragraph, what would that look like?
My core purpose is to create a system of enlightened leadership that leaves a legacy of love and creates peace on earth.
Does that motivate you?
Yeah.
On a visceral level.
It's all in my body. I'm already doing it. So what motivates me is calling people forth into their greatness, right? Because like that's my specific expression of greatness, of like being very tangible and creating a system of enlightened leadership that's going to create some type of system that is like going to give principles to the new type of leadership that we're going to need in the paradigm that's in the process of occurring at the moment. That's going to be very different than where we've been before. And I think I'm very qualified to be able to do this work because I've gone to the places that most people don't go. And I'm just starting to find what these principles are, but it's going to create a a new system for what it means to be a leader that leads with love, that builds with love, that creates with love, that impacts the whole with love specifically. And the only way we can do that is with more love. We have to become more loving ourselves, and the change of our culture starts with us.
Yes, it does. Oh, there are more things to talk about. We are creating 5 episodes on this fast, so stay tuned for more about the fast, about the learnings, the teachings, the experience.
And I think what I want to leave with us today is like, not everyone has to take it that intensely like I did.
In fact, please don't.
Yeah, please don't do that. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed about Tracy is that like she's all about the easy path, which is like as someone who's like a warrior and I'm like struggle and I'm so used to struggling that like learning to persevere now is like maybe it could be easy. And so like I did not choose the easy path. Like I choose the opposite of the easy path. I chose the most definitely the hard path, and I basically chose the path that like it metaphorically killed me on multiple occasions, and also very few people come out of that specific path. So again, like that is not a green light for me to take that specific path.
In fact, it can be much easier. Mine was actually quite fun, and I got to spend a lot of time in nature and dancing and meeting new people and exploring and traveling. So there can be more fun ways to have this journey.
Yeah. And I say that because I don't want people to be like, oh my God, I don't want to have to do something like that to be able to get in line with my purpose. And that's not what I'm suggesting. One of the things I want to mention is everyone's purpose is unique to them. My purpose is not your purpose, right? Like your genetics have a specific expression that will ultimately lead to you embodying your purpose and doing what you're here to do and aligning to your specific place in the grid. That is like completely different than mine. So all I'm here to do is like serve as a role model for being in alignment with my purpose. And I'm just sharing with you the story that help me get to where I am right now. I'm not telling you to go do it. I'm not encouraging you to go do it. I'm not even insisting that you go do what I did. I actually am telling you not to do that specific thing. And I just want you to know that like your path is your specific unique path, and the flow, like what is reality is what will take you there if you're listening.
Part of it also is that because Kova had such an extreme experience, it really outlines and makes it really obvious to actually paint this picture of what the journey of purpose can look like. So that way you can spot it in the more subtle experiences that you're hopefully having.
Yeah, totally. I'm open to the possibility that it can be more subtle.
It could be more subtle.
Yeah, well, as soon as you said that, I was like, of course I was on the extremes. My spine was like totally like the way my spine was structured was like total and extremes. And so, there's so many reasons why we do the things that we do. But I just want to be a reminder that everyone has their unique path, and we are just here to lead you on your own path. That is your unique path. And we're so grateful that you joined us today, wherever you are on your journey.
Blessings. I'll talk to you soon.